everybody, I'm joined today by Owen Spencer, the Director of Digital Applications at Fox Racing. How you doing today, Owen?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Paul?
Doing great, man. Halfway through the week and looking forward to the rest of it. Well, I wanted to bring Owen on board today so I could ask him some questions. So I'm just going to fire the first one off. Owen, could you briefly explain what Fox Racing does?
Yeah, definitely. So Fox Racing, we're actually coming up on our 50-year anniversary next year. We were founded in 1974 in Southern California. Focus initially was on motocross racing, and slowly moved from Fox split off early on where there was parts manufacturing for supplying what the riders needed, slowly moved into jerseys and apparel. And then branched off for fan-based apparel to wear for the races, to represent their favorite riders and their teams. And over the years, we've really evolved. So, moto is still definitely our root. We've expanded out really heavily into mountain bike. So mountain bike is a huge category for us. Also lifestyle, so apparel for you to wear in your day-to-day. And most recently, training apparel. So really focusing on performance training for folks that are looking to be at their peak, both on and off the bike. How do we support that as they transition from working in the gym, grabbing dinner with folks, riding on the weekend, really creating that whole cohesive environment for them. We're a global organization, so our headquarters is down in Irvine, California. We also have an office up in Alberta, Canada, and we have one in Barcelona, Spain as well.
That's amazing. And it's definitely a brand I'm familiar with. I've had friends and cousins that were always in that sport ever since I can remember. I never quite got into it myself. But I think the fear of broken bones may have kept my parents from putting me into it. But it's always been a brand that I've had a fondness for through other family members. I
Yeah,
want to
I held
also,
off for a long time on actually getting into any of it until I started working at Fox, and then being around it, there's just an energy of it, of folks are just, it's such a great community. Luckily we make lots of helmets and guards and protection to keep you safe. So that
there
definitely
we
gives you a
go.
little bit more confidence on the bike for sure.
Absolutely. And could you tell me a bit more about how your team and the work that it does fits in with the greater Fox Racing organization?
Yeah, for sure. So I oversee our internal development team. So we do all of our direct-to-consumer websites are all developed and managed in-house. So I oversee that team. I work really closely with e-com, product, merchandising, brand, really across the whole organization globally, to make sure that the vision of Fox and how we support our riders at every aspect of their journey is represented on the website, with really the goal of creating a best-in-class experience when it comes to e-com, but then also connecting the digital and the physical worlds, which is something that's super important to us, considering that our big push is to be outside, right? So we want you to be outside, we want you to be in the physical world. How do we take all of these different aspects of your journey and the needs of the riders and connect those dots for you? So some of that is consumer facing D2C websites. Some of that is asset management, photo production, creative production, kind of working with those teams, working closely with technology partners, our fulfillment systems, basically anything under the sun that has a digital presence or goes through a digital system. I have some type of interaction with. And our goal is really to just continue to be the leader from a product and a brand perspective. We're one of the most notable names in motocross and mountain bike in the world. And our goal really has been to make sure that that is represented in all of our experiences, and there's a cohesiveness in the story that we're telling throughout those touch points.
That's fantastic. And could you tell me a bit more specifically around how digital quality engineering fits within those initiatives?
Yeah, for sure. Quality is everything. When we talk specifically about digital experiences and, even more specifically into e-commerce, I'm a huge proponent of, consistency equals confidence and confidence equals conversion, right? At the end of the day, somebody's coming to a site to do something. They're either there to research something, they're there to buy something, they're there to follow up on a purchase. And one of the things that we really like to focus on is making sure that we have a consistency in this experience so that they have the confidence in how they're interacting with us. In order to get that consistency, quality is absolutely paramount to making sure that as you're moving through that experience, things work the way that you're expecting them to work, that when you go through design patterns on one section of the site or the experience, that carries through to other sites, other parts of the site or experience. And for that strategy to work, it really comes down to understanding why you're doing what you're doing and crafting that experience, and then making sure that the quality is there throughout. And as we know, in the digital world, it's super complex. We're dealing with different languages, a vast amount of payment methods. Are you on your phone? Are you on a massive TV? Are you on a laptop in an airport? There's so many different things that come into play there, which makes it a really exciting time to be in e-commerce and digital. But also, it's there's a lot of bases to cover to ensure that quality throughout all those experiences.
Agreed. And what were some of the challenges or, let's say, quality initiatives that motivated you and the team to consider crowd testing?
Probably one of the biggest ones for me was, if I look at, and having worked in a lot of different worlds here, having a dedicated QA team in house, there's a lot of benefit about that, right? But you're also limited because you're dealing with what, if you're at a bigger company, maybe you'll have 3 people, right? But like a lot of places are running with a single, quality assurance tester. And as we know, everything that is processed through the human lens is being filtered at some point. So by default, that tester is biased in what they're testing, how they're approaching things, the way they're thinking about requirements. And they also have limited time in a day, right? And they're not looking at it with these different lenses. So for us, being a global organization, it was really appealing to say, oh, we could have this vast network of folks that are testing the experience from different devices, from different regions and different languages with different expectations that would just honestly is not feasible for us to do in-house. For us, we look at the way that somebody works or interacts with our e-commerce site in Germany is very different than the way that somebody interacts with our e-commerce site in Canada. There's some similarities for sure, but there's also a lot of nuance there that we would just not ever be able to handle in-house. And so that was super appealing to get a lot of that, vast amounts of testing quickly with lots of different perspectives to make sure that we're creating an accessible experience and that we're also speaking to the consumer no matter where they are in the world or their journey.
That's excellent. And based on all that, how did you go about integrating crowd testing into your own development cycles?
Previously, we were doing either in-house or we'd work a lot with agencies. So we'd have maybe an agency partner and they would have their internal QA team, but there was a lot of disconnect there. As we went through a big site redesign as part of that, we started to kind of look at a couple of different options. We actually had a technical architect here at the time who had worked with Test.io in a previous capacity, had recommended, hey, this will give us the coverage that we need to kind of get our understanding of the quality of the sites and where things are at without having to onboard a bunch of people to do the testing. So it started as that of really just how do we test. It was a short project, so to put it in context, typically it would, for a site, for our European site, for example, that design and development process kind of in the old days would typically last 18 to 24 months, right? It's requirements gathering, it's design, it's building out. We actually built all of our sites on an accelerated platform that's built on top of Commerce Cloud. And we went from kind of initial project kickoff to sites live for all of our 12 European countries, US and Canada, in just under 6 months, which is super fast. And it was quite the project. But with that, one of the things that we found out pretty quickly was that accelerated time to market for development did not reduce or create an accelerated time to market when it came to testing. And so now as we put all of these massive amount of works, and for us, especially in Europe, it gets very nuanced in those experiences. We're figuring out how do we get as many eyes on this as possible so that we have the confidence to release this, which is how we got started with Test.io. And then that has since evolved as we've kind of changed that model as the relationship has grown. And now that we're in the SaaS approach now.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because when we started the relationship with Fox Racing, between Fox Racing and Test.io, it started as more of a self-led exploratory testing model.
Yep.
Since then, we
Yep.
have migrated over to testing as a service. wanted to ask really what drove the need and the desire to make that migration.
My sanity was number one,
Yeah.
probably. So like the Test.io as a platform and self-driven is awesome if you have the team that can
Mm,
operate that can monitor it, that's kind of going through that flow. And for us, what we were finding was with such limited resources, with a pretty lean team, um, it was like kind of like having like a Ferrari that you never drive,
mm,
right? So when we were looking at this, that was one of the conversations that we started to have with you all, as we were kind of looking at, okay, what are the other offerings that are here? And that's when coming through, oh, we could have, a dedicated test manager that understands our brand, that's working with this vast network of testers, that's kind of helping reduce that overhead on our side, so that we can actually focus on our day to day. And that was really the most compelling of. I started, so kind of backstory is I was on the agency side when the sites were built, and then eventually came over brand side. So when I joined brand side, what I saw was we had a ton of tickets from feedback from testing, and they were just bottlenecked. Nothing was getting done because there was so much. Nobody had the time to groom them or validate them out. And then at the end of the day, we were stuck doing all of our testing in house. So even once that was coming through, somebody still had to go do a functional test on it. Somebody still had to go through UAT testing. And what we were seeing is we'd maybe have, 50 features in the queue that need to be released, and either we couldn't release because they weren't getting tested, or they were getting released and they hadn't been properly tested, and we were seeing the negative aspects of that. So for me, it was, how do we use all of the services? And we looked at a bunch of different models with Test.io and found one that really worked for us, where it's okay, this reduces the overhead, it gets us more time to kind of do the things that we need to do, and also gives us that confidence that like this has been tested. That we're getting proper feedback, we're understanding not just from our functional tests, but also, we do all of our production release, regression testing, smoke testing. All of that is heavily involved with Test.io to make sure, going back to that, we have that consistent experience that creates confidence in our riders.
mm. That's incredible. Now, if you were to be speaking with colleagues or peers, what would you say about Test.io you've been most pleased with from the work that
Mm.
we've done together?
I mean, definitely the thoroughness. My background is in design and development, so as a developer, there is this never-ending battle between QA and development. um, you know, and so of this, like, hey, you tested every single scenario, so developers and QA often go head to head with each other, but that's not how it was designed to work. But at the end of the day, our end users aren't going off of a functional spreadsheet that says this is the happy path of how this thing works. So I think the just the thoroughness in the testing, the ability to find kind of those smaller issues that for us are incremental, right? So some minor issue that we might see in checkout, if you compound that over 100,000 users, not only is that affecting their immediate experience, but it's also affecting their understanding and their confidence in the brand. It also impacts the ability of customer lifetime value for folks to come back to the site and use them again. And so for us, making sure that quality was there was absolutely paramount. And Test.io has just blown us away. I still have to sometimes sit with the developers and have the conversation of like, yes, I know that's like, that's a very specific use case, but it's a use case that could happen. And so that's been huge. Above and beyond like the testing, I would say it's the relationship, right? For me, it's all about what I didn't want to have happen coming into this was basically handing off our quality testing and kind of being in a black box. So the way that we've been able to integrate with the team, like our test manager is an extension of our team. She is in our stand-ups. She works, as we're going through requirements. We talk to each other about upcoming vacations and things that's going on in the world. And so it's really, to be an extension of the team, but have the power of this kind of SaaS model with such a large crowdsourced group has just been amazing.
I'm really happy to hear that, and I know our
Yeah.
whole team is as well. I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to answer all these questions. You've been
Yeah.
extremely thorough, and this is really helpful for us as well. This kind of feedback is really what we look for so that we can always be improving ourselves and making sure that we're helping your team hit the initiatives and goals that you've set out for
Yeah.
yourselves. Based on everything you've already told me, I wanted to ask if there's any other anecdotes you could share about how we may have helped your team before we wrap up today.
Here's a great example. We just went through an entire rebuild of our payment processor for our site. And so as part of that, and it's a massive project. It was something that came kind of, we identified an issue. It was identified that we need to upgrade our payment processor. It's a really big undertaking. We had limited time, limited resources to do it. Worked really closely with our test manager to understand what's our test plan, what's our scenario, so that we're covering all the bases. And went through the whole process, and for us, we're coming down to a time crunch where we have some systems that are being like maintained. So it kind of, it just depends. It impacts what we can push live. So from us, from a business perspective and from the development and technology perspective, the goal was like get to a base level of confidence and get this thing out the door. And so sitting on the calls with our test manager, and for us to be able to have the relationship where she can say, I think this is a bad idea. You have not done, like, there's still proper test cases that need to be done. And not in a way that was combative, or it was totally from a good spot. That, hey, if you guys want to push this out, you can do it. I'm telling you right now, I don't think you should do this. And we didn't do it. I went through some additional testing, and we kind of sat down internally and said, you know what, like, it's right. This is the impact of this going wrong is not worth the trade-off of us pushing this and rushing it out. Let's hold this off and do a little bit of additional testing and make sure that everybody feels super confident about that. And that's just something to be able to have that relationship, I think, is so huge. Whereas working with other testing agencies or third-party QA, sometimes that really becomes kind of like a combative environment, where folks either don't feel like they can speak up, they feel like they're just being, hey, I'm just being paid to test the thing, I'm gonna test it and move on. So I think that just speaks volumes to the relationship. I think the attentiveness to making sure that we are putting the highest quality products out there, and then also the relationship that the teams have all formed with each other over the time we've been working with Test.io.
That's incredible. And I have to say, Owen, this partnership wouldn't have been possible without you as well.
Thanks.
It's just been a pleasure working with you and the team. And again, I want to thank you for your time today. This has been a wonderful 30 minutes or however long it took.
Yeah.
You've been extremely thorough, and really looking forward to continuing our partnership together.
Yeah, likewise. This is awesome. Appreciate all the work Test.io does, and yeah, excited to keep the relationship going.